OOCS into a Wider Galaxy, Part 301. The Bounty Hunters. The path was clearly used time after time, Javra notes as she looks over the sludgy trail in the abandoned building. There is a pause as the entire building creaks for a moment, then everyone regards the slick trail that Javra found. Check the walls. They grab the same places, again and again as they drag themselves around, Dumaya remarks. Uma sniffs the air a bit and nods. Something's moved in. Smells like feathers. Oh, probably the birds would get here first, Guria notes, and Harold just smiles. And what's that grin for? Velocity asks him. Just glad to see everyone interested. I get worried that I'm moving too fast sometimes and dragging you all around or something, he says, and there's a pause. Then Agatha picks him up in a hug. Tone down the cute, I'm already pregnant, and the physical mechanics means I can't suddenly make them a twin. Agatha purrs at him. Not sure I can, Harold notes before he slips out of her grip. Everyone remember to have a chemical scanner ready. Before we descend anywhere, we need to check the area. Mustard gas sinks and can last. What does it do? It's a blistering agent, so skin contact alone is enough. But in gas form, it gets in the lungs, and if your lungs blister, yeesh, that's a dirty way to die, Javra notes. Yeah, and your species use this on themselves? Why? Velocity asks. Poisons are a way to get someone that's otherwise too safe. It's a dirty way to fight, though, and few people will ever deny that. But if you want to take an area intact but without the people, send in the gas. Just make sure you have the counteragent ready, otherwise no one gets the area, Harold explains. It has all the perniciousness of radiation, up to and including an unclean and gruesome death, Velocity says. Yes, Harold says as he heads over to what appears to have once been an elevator shaft that used axiom platforms and safety barriers. All of them are deactivated, and he conjures a ball of light. He then drops down the shaft to illuminate the way down. You think this stuff is still active? Jevra asks him as she flutters over and grabs onto the edge of the doorway to look down. Possibly, on Earth, you have a few weeks where the area is tainted in general, and a few days where it's immediately dangerous. But what axiom do to the stuff, or the things affected by it? It's not only a poison, but it can induce mutation as well. But it should be gone, however. It's never been used outside of cruel space before. Correct. And I couldn't help but notice that Hafid's conservation effort had a lot of freshly dead animals, which means that any number of things might have happened. Okay, Harold, honey, I think you need to look up the definition of a vacation. You're not supposed to investigate mysteries when relaxing. Jira notes as she slithers over and then brings out a chemical scanner. It floats out of her hand, floats down, and then comes back up. We are also not going into the lower levels of this building. Shit, it's still active, Harold notes as he sees the high levels of sulfur and chlorine remaining. So what's to be done? Velocity asks as she tilts her head over Harold to look down. But there's nothing to see, as whatever has sustained the mustard gas hasn't made it any easier to see at a distance. We inform the locals and recommend they hit the area with calcium hypochloride. Adding more chlorine? It's a counteragent. I don't know the exact chemical processes that makes it work, though, Harold says as Velocity leans back and away before putting on a pair of goggles she had hidden on her person and looking down again. They zoom in almost audibly, and she lets out a concerned sound. I can see it. It's a film, maybe a few millimeters thick. That's too much. With how much deeper this building goes, that is far, far too much residue, Harold says with a frown. I'm going to inform the local authorities and start shouting at the chain breaker. This is their mess, and while it's weird as hell, they are ultimately responsible. As if you're not going to help them. Of course I'm going to help them, but this is their problem, so they need to take the lead. And then everything just started to make more and more sense. It's weird, you know? Memories that were older and faded are now really clear. You know when you try to remember something and then it fades away again? Well, it's not fading anymore. It stays fresh. So then you would recall Father's face, Hafid asks. Both mine and yours. From before I started to call home again, Terry confirms. Most remarkable. You were barely past your infancy when it occurred, Hafid says in a considering tone. Now, while I was clearly underestimating your human friend, I am curious as to your own martial capabilities. You've been kidnapped once, and while your new axiom gifts will make you immensely difficult to take advantage of, I hope you see the wisdom in preparing for things should someone decide that they don't appreciate being denied their every petty whim. Of course, I was actually hoping you might help me with something. You see, I spoke with Dad not long after he got hit by an attack recently, and apparently he can hear things that I'm not able to. With both Mom and Dad being Trets and all, you lack any Sonir traits despite having many Sonir in your direct bloodline. As such, you cannot even hear half the tones we can make. Echolocation is beyond you. Yeah, but I can do this, Terry says as he's enveloped first in a purple film, and then it darkens to a night sky black. Are these Vinoc nebulae spores? Hafid asks. They are. Most interesting. But what are you hoping to achieve? If you are to overhear echolocation, you require something to pick up the actual frequencies. Hafid notes, and then there is a sudden shifting to the texture and coloration of numerous parts of the suit to try and accomplish something. I think you are overcomplicating things. You wish to hear yes? Then make new ears. What? Terry asks, and Hafid sighs before grabbing his hands and guiding them to his own long ears. Use your axiom Terrence, feel out the physical structure in my own body, and use it to adjust your armor. Hafid instructs him, and Terry raises an eyebrow, then focuses. The armor on his head starts to stretch back in two patches and sharpen to a pair of points. Hafid suddenly opens his mouth, and there is no sound that Terry can hear, but he can hear something else bouncing off of everything. Very well done, Hafid says. Now, his wing lashes out and bowls over Terry. He recovers and is in a fighting stance. The ears are gone. The hell was that for? You did not maintain your new ears. You need to work on that. If the slightest distraction can deafen you to the sounds you require to hear, then you may as well be deaf at all times. Hafid states, it's not that bad. It can be used to potentially sneak around, scout a dark area. True, however, the moment things head into an unexpected direction, what will you do? What happens when someone is akin to your father and has a lineage allowing them to hear far beyond their standard spectrum? Hafid presses and Terry can't really answer. There are many races that can hear the echolocation of a Sonir. Most Canid and Felid races can. The Fossa make sport of manipulating sound waves to such an extent, and while they also cannot use echolocation, you are screaming your location to any rabbis in the area, to say nothing of more exotic effects that the sounds may interact with. It only takes one surprise to learn that a Drin or Urthani can in fact detect the distortions by how we vibrate things on an exotic light spectrum, Jin Shui adds. Also something to take into account for hiding in darkness. If you face someone who can see heat or into the electromagnetic spectrum, you're not hidden at all. To say nothing about those who are more akin to darkness itself, Hafid says as he gives his mother a slight smile. I told you it does not work that way. And yet you still have failed to explain precisely how an absence of light somehow translates into a physical substance? Hafid notes, and his mother simply brushes back her flowing shadows for hair. I've explained it several times, but your failure to understand is not my fault, Jin Shui notes. I don't know, as his mother isn't it kind of exactly your fault for him not understanding things? Terry asks for no other reason than to stir the pot and see what happens. Is that how you see the situation? Jin Shui demands with her hands on her feet. Hafid takes a step away from her. Terry gives him a sudden and alarmed look. Blaming me for the lack of one's own flexibility of the mind. How very, very rude. Her shadow is now concentrated beneath her and beginning to stretch out in all directions. To begin with, all elements as they are understood are in truth conceptual. But that doesn't make sense, air is a gas. When you have indigestion, are you spewing forth air or gas? Your armor is composed of countless tiny pieces. Are they a solid, a liquid, or a gas? None. They are alive. And that stops them from fitting into the previous categories. How? Of course I wasn't the only one scouting out that whole head-building issue. It was clear that's where the controlling brain was the whole time. But with axiom effects pouring out of it like laser fire, another answer was needed. That's when Dad and the rest of his team showed us that they've been experimenting with invisible armor. They call it ghost armor. Yes, I've seen it, both in use and a warehouse with a great deal of it stored, Observer Wu confirms. Really? Where? Slytherin asks. I'm not certain that's for me to say, Observer Wu deflects. Still, you were not the only one scouting out this house. How were you doing that anyways? If a tiny drone dedicated to stealth and precision was detected immediately, then how did you slip a larger and more robust model past them? Distraction. There was so much to focus on that so long as I stopped it from drawing attention to itself, I could scout from room to room. But like I said, it wasn't fast enough. So the rest of the team used my own trick to get in, get dropped off well in advance of the monster, and angle themselves to be swept up into it, all invisible and undetectable to the beast. Fascinating and practical. But what was in the building? Would I be correct to assume it was more than merely that one room with a twisted tree and eyes? It was a full-on house that seemed to be built by different people who couldn't agree on anything. Anything beyond how miserable they were. They had memorials to their hopes and dreams. They had the whole place carved out as if they were trying to make a haunted house. Honestly, if they had some skeletons or people dressed as ghosts, it could have been a legitimate haunted house. Then we started finding large fleshy orbs in it. Orbs. There was some joking at the time as to what to call them, comparing them to testicles. We never really learned what they did, but the men placed explosives onto them and kept finding more, which is when the final legs got cut off the monster, and then when it tried an axiom attack, it was redirected into it, which caused the structure to jump. Did it expose your drone? It did, and I was grabbed again. That set Dad off. Thankfully, I had some time before the twisted monster tried to actually kill me, because a full third of its mind flat out refused to hurt a child, which I still counted as. Then out of nowhere, something is attacking the monster, shredding it bit by bit, and I'm wrapped up in a cloth I can't see and carried away at a dead sprint as things start breaking down and breaking apart. And how did you get out alive? Half the team was with Dad, and they were assaulting the creature. Then everything went white as it lost all patience. It managed to grab Dad and was holding him in its fist, but still wasn't able to see him. So he called in an artillery strike on his own location. He did what? Artillery with his signal being used as the target. Well, that's insane. No, the insane part is that it didn't work despite a direct hit, but his knife is what sealed the deal when all was said and done. Yes, that is the insane part. OOCS into a wider galaxy, Part 302. The Bounty Hunters. Are you kidding me? Even if it was at the quantities you're implying, and it wasn't I helped make that stuff, it would have been massively neutralized, if not fully neutralized by the general humidity in the air, slowly wearing it down. To say nothing of other natural chemicals or the fact that we've had a winter season pass through the area, freezing and thawing would break it down even faster. Bike protests, it had been an uncomfortable revelation to learn that the gas was still active. But the question of how was a big one. Chemical weapons have shelf lives and need to be sealed for more than just safety concerns. He reaches into the small cooler next to his console and pulls out a bottle of beer. He shifts the connection to his implant and starts drinking as he thinks. I'm not throwing stones here. I'm informing you that there is a much higher concentration and quantity of mustard gas residue. It's at such extreme levels that we'll need hazmat, if not full-on sealed armor. All right, but why am I your first call? You're the people that introduced mustard gas into this system, so it's of interest to you. We cleaned out the vast majority before we left, and there has been ongoing efforts since. And there is still a hill of dead animals that Hafid and his conservation group is running into, and enough residue to stain the area. Something is replicating it. Harold returned. I don't like that. I don't like that at all, Bike says. Things change and evolve at a lightning pace, but mustard gas can cause mutations, and you used it on something already mutated. Couple that with the flash evolution that Axiom brings, and the fact they were actively using Axiom. The bigger question is, why haven't we spotted them sooner? You might have spooked them underground, potentially literally, Harold says. That's all too likely. Easiest way to find them is to send some drones in. I'll have to give our little phantom a scare. Who? Oh, Slithern has taken to wearing a half-face mask. He looks like he's ready to play the part of the Phantom of the Opera. Okay, how many nicknames does this kid have? More by the day, why? Fun. How soon can I expect some scouting on that mess? Likely as soon as the little guy's out of his chat with Observer Wu. Bike says, all right, keep me in the know. I want to help. Copy that. By the way, what's with that kid I heard you ferrying around? Bike asks. Terry, a former kidnapping victim from the Vinoc Nebula cult. Get this, though. His name is Terrence Wayne, son of Warren Wayne, grandson of Brutality Wayne. His grandfather is a Sunner bounty hunter. Wait. Yeah, something's going on. Things are lining up in ways that they shouldn't. Think it's infinite monkey theory? The galaxy is big enough for it, Bike asks. Maybe, but there's already a lot of patterns that aren't fully understood, and coincidences that are acknowledged to not actually be coincidences, but have no better explanation. Are you going somewhere with this? I'm not totally sure, but there are weird connections that happen when a lot of axiom get thrown around and null is just too much axiom to be used. Again, what are you getting at? Again, I don't know, but I currently have pure white eyes, a blue diamond on my forehead, and a pair of red swooshes under each eye, as does Herbert and every other tiny Meowing clone brother I have, and so do my human nieces and nephews. Things are more connected than we think, but is it connected through the axiom, through that other direction, or through something else? Or all of the above? Harold asks. That's a brain teaser. I'm forwarding this conversation to the boys on Centris, and then I'm heading to our chemical plant to make some counterchemicals for the mustard gas. I don't care if the batch you found is the only instance. If it's somehow every bit from the original gassing back for a rerun, or some fresh stuff made by another group, it all needs to be nullified. And as I said, call me when you're ready. I'm in. Copy that, I'm hanging up now, Bike says. Did you even pick up at all, or just use your implant? I've been drinking beer this whole time. Bike sends and Harold chuckles. Nice, I'll leave you alone now. I need to get back to Terry and check to see if his uncle has eaten him alive yet. It concerns me that with the way this galaxy is, I don't know just how metaphorical you're being. I know, right? Terry watched in a mildly horrified fascination as Hafid delicately sampled the drop of blood and nodded. You eat too many sweets. I told you, Jin Shui notes. What the actual fuck? I was joking when I said that, Harold says as he arrives on the scene. He then checks the area again and notices the gouges in the ground, and the fact that Terry is sitting on a table with Jin Shui bringing out what looks like a bag of snacks. So what did I miss? A thorough education on how the fact that due to quantum states existing, shadows are in effect a type of matter, Terry says. What? Harold demands. Believe me, it was something that needed a physical demonstration, Terry says, and Harold looks considerate. Desist from attacking my mother in curiosity, Hafid says, reading the expression on his face. Harold shrugs. Fine. Anyways, I came for a few reasons, and checking in on Terry was just one. Why are you tasting his blood anyways? It is a tracking technique that tells me what a target has been eating over a long period. Not many get away if I've drawn blood, but for the few that do, it tells me what they've been doing. Terrence has not been eating properly, Hafid answers. He's a teenager. His metabolism is in a state he could survive off of styrofoam and vitamin pills. I do not know what styrofoam is, but judging from the way you spoke it, I will disagree, Hafid states. It's the right answer either way, Harold says. Still, there is something I need to tell you. I checked one of the areas where the initial gas attacks were aimed at. Much smaller yields were there, and they were contained in buildings. I am aware. They're not dissipating. They should have decayed by now, but it seems that something has either preserved the chemical weapon or is producing more. Either way, that's going to get in the way of your conservation efforts. It would explain the sheer amount of damage we've seen. What's the general decay rate of this weapon? It can be reasonably expected to remain dangerous for 50 hours to a human and negatively affect the soil and groundwater for a decade. But these areas have seasonal winters. The freezing and thawing should have massively sped up the degradation. You should be cleaning some tainted soil and pulling out poison weeds, not autopsying dozens of animals. Even with the vulnerability to poisons the galaxy generally has, the microbes would have seen to this. What about other animals? This stuff stinks. Almost all animals avoid any area hit with mustard gas. It's to such a degree that we actually don't have much data on what happens to wild mammals caught in it because they all immediately vacate the area. Interesting. Nature is wise in ways we generally foolish, Hafid remarks as he considers something, then says nothing before nodding and turning away. And where are you going? Harold asks. Something is either exacerbating the poison or producing more. Either way, I will be finding it and putting a stop to it. Get some protective gear first. It's a blister agent. Skin contact is torture for me. On you, it may be outright lethal. Harold states, and Hafid looks back with disdain, then with a swell of axiom is encased in a suit of armor with no gaps. All right, fair enough. I'll go grab my own and join you. I'm going with, Terry says suddenly in his dark suit once more. Absolutely not. That armor is made of biological material. The poison is as dangerous to your armor as it is to you, and when it fails, it will strike at you. It can convert physical matter it comes into contact with. But do you have the mental fortitude to cause such an effect to run continuously as you are potentially under attack by an unknown party? Hafid asks. I may have an answer to this. It's as delicate as a chainsaw, but it's an answer. And the answer is, Hafid asks, walking subs. We have a few. Walking subs, those are civilian-grade sealed armor for terrestrial people to visit marine habitats. Heavy armor, but minimal weapons, Hafid mutters. He's your nephew and decent in a scrap or not. I also agree that a child in a chemical weapon spill is a bad idea, Harold says, and Hafid nods. Oh, come on, Terry protests. All right, I know that look. The only way you're coming is in a sealed suit, and since we don't have one tailored to you, that means a walking sub. You're surrendering like that? Hafid asks with barely concealed disgust in his tone. He's going to sneak after us, likely without proper protective equipment, but only if we say no, Harold says, and Hafid moves in such a way to indicate he just sighed, but the actual sound was blocked by his armor. Which means that it is best if he is fitted into a sealed environment, Jin Shui says. Come along, grandson. We have just the thing. It will last you 6 hours before needing to rest. Woo, Terry exclaims. His impulsiveness will see him harmed, Hafid says in a concerned tone. That's why you, the adult family member, needs to look out for him. I am aware of how to parent, thank you. And so at the same time I was awarded the Crystal Star, the Orhanas were officially sworn in as a species of the Loblin Empire. And you still have both the trophy from the Gestalt and the Crystal Star in your quarters. Well, not in my quarters at the moment, Slytherin says as the door opens to reveal 2 hovering drones. I knew you were about to ask, so I sent out some drones to grab them. I see, Observer Wu says as the skull helmet of the Gestalt is carried in front of him. Is this made of axiom ride? It is. They were powerful enough to convert gas into some of the most valuable material in the galaxy, which is no mean feat. The recording of Mr. Shea converting air into gold caused quite the stir on Earth. Yeah, transfiguring gases into solids is complicated stuff. You either need dozens of adepts working together to brute force it, or to memorize the exact atomic and molecular structure of a thing to do that. From my understanding, Mr. Shea cheats. He has a small bundle with numerous samples on his person at all time and uses that to get the exact atomic and molecular competition down. Oh yeah, I think I remember being told that, Slytherin says. Not sure that's cheating, though. He calls it a cheat sheet, so if he says it's cheating, Observer Wu trails off. Then I guess it is cheating, Slytherin says. Anyways, that's the big adventure on how I became a noble. I poked at a problem that no one else cared about until it poked me back and then called for help. Don't discount that. Someone who gives a warning or can find out a problem is just as needed as the people who actually provide the answers. After all, you can't solve any problem you're not aware of, Observer Wu says, even as Slytherin brings the Crystal Star close for examination. It's a beautiful thing, putting in mind diamonds and prisms at the same time, all artfully carved into a brilliant star shape. More like a gallery piece than a medal of achievement. But considering it symbolized the ennobling of a non-citizen and the granting of a citizenship at the same time, it made sense it would be ostentatious. Then the door opens again, and the strong frame of Drake Engel, aka Bike, leans in. Hey, you're wrapping up right? I think so. What's wrong? We need some drones to take some looks. It turns out our little gift to this world hasn't dissipated the way it should have. What? The mustard gas, it hasn't degraded, and we need some eyes and scanners in there, Bike says. But only if you're finished, no one's in direct danger, so you've got time. Are we finished? Slytherin asks Observer Wu. This session, I have more questions, but they can wait for later. About what? Your life before the chaining. I'd like to know about Fleetborn culture a bit. Oh, okay, but yeah, later. OOCS, Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 303. The Bounty Hunters. Terry watches the energy play over his hands and between his fingers as he has a perfect containment field surrounding his body. There were 3 layers to this. Outermost is what Grandma gave him. He had his armor on, and Harold had passed him a pendant that had protective traits from somewhere on his person before rushing off to grab his own armor. Then a trinity of thumps sounds out, and Hafid is staring as Terry turns around. On is a gigantic woman in power armor. Another is a small fighting mech. The last one looks like a gray hooded cloak surrounding absolute nothingness. What am I looking at? Terry asks. Well, this is Agatha and Dumaya. Harold's voice sounds out from the empty cloak. In particular, it sounds out from the clasp, which clearly has a speaker incorporated into it. He's wearing ghost armor. It's a human thing. Only they can see it, even altered ones like Harold. And why is he using experimental stealth armor? Hafid asks. If things go weird, I can drop the cloak and peel apart anything. Harold replies easily. You expect danger? There's already danger. This is in case there's a target. Harold replies even as Terry steps forward and starts poking at the empty space the cloak is draped over. Oh, this is cool, Terry says as his finger meets armor plating and he starts feeling things out. Okay, kid, knock it off. You're too young and too male to be feeling me up, Harold says, and Terry feels a hand reach his shoulder and push him back lightly. Whoa, this is so weird. I'm not sensing anything. Of course you're not. His stealth armor is comparable to my own, another voice says, and Terry looks around. Wait, you're that weird Mayak velocity? I'm in sealed stealth armor of my own. Now let's look at the damage. I am uncertain your stealth will avail you if we encounter the gas, Hafid says. Perhaps not, but it's sealed armor, and I wish to help. Velocity answers. Very well then. This is my conservation effort, so I shall be leading our excursion into the contamination zone. Hafid states, will there be any opposition to this? None whatsoever. If you believe you know best, then I'd like to see it, Harold states simply. Very well then, Hafid says as his armor starts projecting an image of the nearby area. The highest concentration of dead flora and sickened fauna is roughly 400 meters from our location. We will begin our search there. If what Mr. Jameson has attested is true, then there must be a fresh source or some form of preservation or renewal effect on the poison to keep it so highly concentrated. Whatever the cause is, we are there to remove, if not destroy it. It is ending countless lives, and if one cares for the microbial scale, likely billions by the minute. To say nothing of what kind of widespread devastation this can cause if it spreads into the water table. There is an aquifer 4 kilometers away. If this poison reaches it, the consequences of such a spread will be nothing short of disgusting. Which explains where the bulk of your forces was heading to. They're trying to cut off any potential spread, or at least detect it, Harold notes. Correct. They are dealing with the limbs of the beast. We seek the heart of the monster. Your passion, while commendable, is bringing in a great deal of drama that you need to tone down. We're going on a search, Mr. Wayne. We need to be deliberate and calm too, Harold states. No. Let him cook. This is getting good, Terry replies. At least someone appreciates the gravitas of the situation, Hafid says approvingly. Now then, we move. Hello? What's this? Slytherin asks as he pauses. He has a drone slowly floating through and scanning the walls, prepared to switch to a different and shifted resolution if something like the pale generator is still somehow alive in that lair. Psychus, that scratch is off color, Observer Wu notes as he watches Slytherin work, which means it hasn't had enough time to be stained by the gas. It's recent. Something is moving in the poison, Jade says on the other side. Yep, Slytherin notes. Unfortunately, the scanner on that drone doesn't have the tools to take and scan a sample on the spot. Still, it's important information. I'm sending in some escorts with weapons. 2 more projectors pop up and the small ship Slytherin had remote piloted to the planet lets out 2 more drones. Or rather, lets out a pair of flying cannons, one plasma, the other laser, and both of them high enough yield for a starfighter to pay attention to. Then there is movement on the first drone, and Slytherin jerks it back and away from whatever might be coming. There is a glimpse of something sharp moving through the mustard gas, then vanishing downwards. Slytherin tilts the drone downwards, even as he adjusts just where the drone is heading, and finds nothing. No hint of what just attacked as he scans the area. The hell was that? Jade demands. Good question, Slytherin says as he turns the scanning on, as high as it will go. Then he catches part of the reading and jerks the drone to the side, catching a trail of something disrupting the gas before not. It's phasing through solid matter. What is? Jade presses. Let's find out. Slytherin states before he focuses the scanning beam into a tighter and tighter spread until it's more akin to a laser pointer and then begins to spin the drone. How is that going to? Jade begins to ask when Slytherin suddenly jerks the drone away and catches a glimpse of something in motion. You baited it out. I baited it out. Slither states as he shifts the drone again and catches a glimpse of a corpse. The gangly, ghoulish thing vanishes into the gas, and both Slytherin and Jade share a look as Observer Wu leans forward in fascination and disgust. Well, you don't see that every day, Jade notes. Nope, Slytherin replies. Call it in. I'm going to keep poking it. Jade brings out her communicator and starts fiddling with it as the cannons arrive where the scanning drone is dodging around, and Slytherin hits the area just under the drone with a blast of plasma followed by baking the hole made in the gas with the laser. The unholy shriek from whatever the hell is actually going on in there causes his eyebrows to rise up even as he hunkers down and locks in to use all 3 drones to watch the entire hallway of the abandoned and tainted office building at the same time. We're still 3 stories off the ground, and the blueprint says there are 2 basement levels at minimum. Police reports had suspicions of a hidden basement level below even that. Is there a name for this architectural style? I'm not seeing any windows, and it looks like from the 5th floor down, the entire building is well sealed and almost armored. It's an amphibious style. The lower levels are intended to be flooded for things like Akka, Mera, Lidris, and any race that is more comfortable in the water. There's no real name for it, it's just a sensible thing to have, like how some buildings are peppered in balconies and have almost nothing in the way of hallways if it's for flying peoples, Slytherin says offhandedly. Interesting, Observer Wu states before he spots something, and before he can point it out, Slytherin's laser drone lights up the area, and there's another unearthly shriek. Slytherin suddenly lets out a hissing sound as he looks over a readout from the scanning drone. Jade spots it next and lets out a concerned sound. Mera DNA detected. Weren't the pale generators made from a Cobe's DNA? Observer Wu asks. They were, Slytherin says. Jade, get back on your communicator. This isn't as cut and dry as we thought it was. The levels of the gas are far from dangerous. It's consistent with the level of harm we've seen on the creatures, Jin Shui states from within her isolation belt. The fact she's also turned herself into a walking shadow is how she intends to keep herself physically safe. The ground toxicity levels are also low, Hafid notes as he grabs some earth and holds it to a scanner. But all the plants are dead. The whole area is blasted, Agatha says, and Harold lets out a growling sound before walking up to one of the brittle, skeletal trees and pushing on it hard. There's danger below, directly below, something hostile, Harold says as the roots start cracking and breaking, like the twisted, dried twigs they've been reduced to. There is a deep groaning as the dead tree tilts, and then falls over entirely. A cacophony of smashing snaps as the entire thing breaks, and the trunk splits to spit up half-rotted wood chunks. Everyone backs up as the ground around the base of the tree collapses downwards until there is a pit between the trees of the forest, and everyone looks down. It's worse than we feared, Jin Shui states. Whatever abomination is responsible for this shall burn. Hafid bites out in a rage. Something is watching us, but it is too cowardly to attack up front, Harold says as he stands on the remains of the tree that's only avoided falling into the pit by the now snapping and breaking branches of the tree. Then they break, and the tree falls from beneath Harold. He rides it all the way down and ends up to his waist in mustard gas. He steps around and then staggers and windmills around for a moment. Is there a problem? Hafid asks. There's a hole here. The gas is covering it up. Harold remarks before the gas is suddenly slammed into multiple directions, kicking it up and revealing the layout of the pit. He crouches down and, by the way his hood shifts around, is looking around. There's a series of tunnels here. The tree roots alone are keeping this forest standing. What the hell? Hafid demands as he jumps down. Then his wing snaps out and gives Harold a smack. Do not be so cavalier with poison gases. Fine. Still, can we get some echolocation working? We need to have some ideas about these tunnels. Harold asks and Hafid gives him a glare, despite the fact that one is invisible and the other in feature-concealing armor. Hafid then turns to face the tunnel, and there is something at the very edge of Agatha's hearing that she doesn't like, but no one else responds but Hafid until Terry starts growing the false ears again. What the hell? Try to use more sophisticated words, grandson, Jin Shui states. I don't know what I'm hearing here. Hey, that thing circling around, whatever it is, it's hostile, Harold notes. Noted. Thankfully, the tunnels are very dark and made of consistent material. I'm not detecting any tritite, so I can see who our friend is. Hafid notes, before suddenly diving down into the hole. Harold leans over to take a look in and leans back, then turning as he tracks Hafid towards whatever the hostile is, and a high-pitched gargling screech of rage echoes from the deep as something encounters a giant bat with both power armor and a serious attitude. Something gets thumped into something else, and it lacked the sound of something like power armor being on any part of the thumping beyond facilitating it. There is a more panicked and lengthy scream, and it's shortly followed by several more violent thumping sounds and then finishes with a snapping noise. Then there is a rush of movement out the hole as Hafid goes for the sky and lets go of something to screech in pain and confusion before it thumps into the ground. Hafid lands on the branch of a dead tree, swings down and starts hanging there to glare at the barely mobile mass of near-skeletal limbs, thin skin, and a vaguely hominid profile. Fuck, Harold notes as he sees just how much of a resemblance it has to a pale generator, at least in its bald head with elongated and sharpened teeth. Scanner says it possesses Koiran DNA, Hafid supplies, and I've just received a message that another team has found one of these things with Mera DNA, Harold adds. That's not good, Terry states the obvious. Is it spliced with anything? Velocity asks. We need a deeper scan to know that. Hafid notes as Harold walks near the creature. And this thing it can see my hand, Harold says as he waves his hand around it and it follows the movement. I'm wearing ghost armor. Anything that relies on axiom to perceive things or has it in their nervous system cannot see me. It may be spliced as your wife suggested. If so, it could potentially be tracking the heat or interference with ultraviolet light, Hafid suggests. Maybe, but either way this is concerning, Harold states. OOCS Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 304. The Bounty Hunters. What in the actual hell am I looking at? Jacob demands as he stares at the thing being kept in containment. Captain Schreiktalon, good to see you again, Pukey says as he walks into the lab with bio-exclusion chamber, one that was rapidly filling with a noxious yellow vapor. Hey, how are you? Now what the actual hell is this thing? We don't know. We captured it with an ally and are giving it a thorough scan in here, where it's off the planet and no longer causing harm. It's apparently a Koiran. No. It's clearly not a Koiran by any stretch of the imagination, Jacob says, looking at the emaciated, bald, flat-faced, flat but sharp-toothed thing that was somehow supposed to be a canine. Someone's been playing fast, loose, and mean with cloning. We've seen this before. We double-killed the person responsible. Can people come back from the dead here too? Mental imprint backups. The responsible party, a code by the name of Iva Grace, was killed by a hollow daughter while in our control, and then when we went about the business of getting into her business, a mental imprint activated and we saw to her death as well. Do we have a relative of hers in the Undaunted? Her original or perhaps father? Eva Grace was a clone that went insane and imprisoned her father, Dr. Ivan Grace, stole his identity and held a world hostage. Oh, Jacob notes as he taps on the glass of the gasping, wretched thing. And she made these monuments to how ugly someone can get. What even is this? If it is a Koiran, then it's been hit with every degenerative disease and, well, every disease in general, to be honest. It's the visual shorthand for sick. Basically, there was a version she made that created the axiom effect over the whole world, but she used her own DNA for that so they wouldn't just destroy her or her more intelligent clones out of hand. But if her heir or this next instance of a mental copy or whatever the hell the source of this is using other species, which it is, then things are being changed up. But our first clue is in the ravaged DNA of the monster, Pukey says as Jacob looks around before leaning to the side and reading over Cindy's shoulder. Space, please, she says, and he straightens up. Sorry. What's really weird about this is that it seems to have its body remade to produce this stuff on the exhale. Onyx notes as she examines a chemical scanner. She's in her normal tight leathers and air farces on her shoulder. Which means it, Pukey starts to say before the creature abruptly slows down and starts hunkering in on itself. Now what? Its axiom profile just changed dramatically. Jacob, the closest to the creature, states, I think it's trying to feed itself, Onyx notes, but its stomach is inflating. Now, that's a sign of chronic starvation. It's trying to eat, but only getting air, so its stomach inflates. Airfarce says as he watches it try to eat again and again. It starts letting out more and more mustard gas as it does so, and he checks the pressure in the container. The thing isn't increasing the pressure at all, just breathing more and more. The containment quickly fills with the grungy yellow-brown gas and reduces the thing to a shivering, fetal-positioned blur in the gas. Well, that just happened, Jacob notes. No. Kidding, so when these things can't get enough food, they produce more. How does that work? Airfarce asks. It's a spreading method. As they lose prey or food supplies thanks to their poison, they sit down and start producing more, forcing further generations to press out further and further, pushing out just how much area is being drenched in the gas, Pukey says before sighing. Thank goodness they're still going with the flaws we built into our initial batches. Properly made mustard gas is colorless and odorless, but we made ours impure to make cleanup easier. This is the impure stuff? Then how much more dangerous is the pure stuff? Jacob asks. No. More or less, the impure gas is much easier to detect, though. It stinks, and it has that distinct coloring. Are you saying there might be a refined or improved version of this monster that is giving off an odorless, colorless weapon of mass destruction? Potentially. Fuck, Jacob curses. Yeah. Trainery, incidentally, what's the actual shape of the chemical string? Jacob asks right out of left field. Why? Because I'm weaving this into a rope. What? Valoryn tradition. Don't worry. Jacob notes almost absently as he sees the thing twitch in the smoke. But yeah, I think I want to help with this. For all the good it does me, I'm a fast flyer on a ship or under my own powers, and my talons are sharp, and I've got good aim. Do you have all that while in a sealed combat suit? This gas is a blister agent. You don't need to breathe it in for it to start killing you. I've had some training, but not enough to be confident doing flybys in a full suit. Still, my ship has a bombardment laser. If you need an area deleted, we'll call you and we'll keep you in the loop. But I don't think your skills are what are needed here. Pity, Jacob notes. All right, if I'm not needed, then I'm just crowding things up, and I'm not the type to let that happen. Best of luck, and you know where to find me if you need it. Tonk! The creature tries diving into containment field and bangs off it, head first. And that's a mild concussion at least. Slytherin notes. I think we can take pattern recognition off its skill list, Jade notes. After about 10 minutes of getting increasingly annoyed with the extremely elusive creature, Slytherin had sent in a sacrificial drone and set the secondary location to a containment field. It had worked like a charm as he let the creature swipe and take a literal bite out of the teleportation beacon that was the drone, and now it was throwing a hissy fit at being got. So, have you used these teleporting drones to kidnap people? No. In that it doesn't work for people. Well, most people, you need to be pretty axiom ignorant for something this simple to get you. So it's mostly for animals, the sleeping or the very young or very senile. So was that a yes? In that I've caught a couple drug traffickers in their sleep and teleported them into the middle of a stasis pod as they slept, yes. How did that end? I learned the fun words in 3 languages when I turned them in. Slytherin notes and Jade starts giggling before muttering under her breath. Hey, do I need to tell your parents you're saying such things around innocent ears? And whose ears are those? Jade demands. His, Slytherin says, gesturing to Observer Wu. And Jade snorts before giggling further. Glad to see I'm the only one concerned with the fact that this creature seems to phase through solid matter. It's not getting through the fields, and I've got bug-out tags on US with a bomb in the room in case it does. You what? Observer Wu asks. We're standing on bombs. If it gets out, we're all teleported 3 hallways down, and this room becomes a firestorm that would make an Apuk think twice before the side blows open and it all goes into space. Slytherin says, and Jade reaches down to unlatch a floor panel and show that there are indeed charges on the undersides. Impressive, Observer Wu states. May I assume the guest badge I have clipped to my belt is the source of this safety precaution? Yes, sir. In every room where we have dangerous things out of stasis is designed to open to the void and rigged with more boom than anyone wants to be in. Slytherin notes. So keep the badge clipped on and ready at all times. It's a lot of things, Observer Wu. It's your friendly IFF, your access pass to allowed areas, a shield rated against anything under vehicle level for a full 10 seconds, emergency life support, and oh shit teleport beacon. Observer Wu picks up the bronze-looking badge with the undaunted symbol on it and a broken chain for the edge design and tries to see where it all is. It's hollow and has numerous plates on the inside that provides the effects. It's easier and more effective to make numerous harmonious totems instead of one super totem, Jade explains. Then Observer Wu turns it and spots the seam. I see. Very clever, Observer Wu notes before clipping it back on. I must confess I am no expert in the construction of axiom totems, so I will be taking your word for now. Trust but verify. Slytherin notes as there's another attempt by the degraded Mara creature to phase through the containment field. It smashes in again and then pushes again and again and again, bashing its head against the shielded glass. Now what? It smashes its head again and again and again until something snaps and both younger, undaunted, flinch as Observer Wu's eyes narrow. We're leaving this room. Now. What? Slytherin asks. I know this sensation. We're in a trap. Move. Observer Wu states as memories of an ambush and the sounds of gunfire echo through his mind. Thankfully, there are no questions and no debates as everyone rushes out of the room and they slam the door shut behind them. Moments later, the room detonates and everyone shares a look before Slytherin accesses an external camera on a wall panel to reveal the debris field, followed by something thrashing just off the edge of the camera. Then something knocks into it and the corpse of an entirely new monster floats into view. Then the macabre process repeats itself twice before stopping. Did an entire troop of the damn things teleport in to reinforce their dead friend? Jade demands. Looks like it, Slytherin says. I'm bringing a drone around. He transfers the visual onto the panel, and they watch from the drone's perspective as numerous of the horrors float in the vacuum of space. All thankfully dead, but the fact that the last one is so enormous it could only be a twisted Lidris is telling. So where'd you pick up that instinct? Jade asks Observer Wu. Getting ambushed as a police officer, it's something you never forget. There is the echo of feet hitting deck plating, and there is suddenly a small group of people among them. Jade can't keep back the sass. "Little slow, guys. Is anyone hurt?" Pukey asks. "No. One we care about, but we have a lot more dead friends now," Slithern says as he indicates the screen. "Oh, shit. This is getting more complicated. Do we have anything for how they teleported in?" "They were summoned by one of their own dying." Information enough. Let's see if we can't bring a few friends in." "It committed suicide to provoke the summoning," Slithern clarifies and Pukey pauses. "But the other one hasn't," Pukey considers. "Maybe it really hated my face?" "I don't know. It bashed its head against the glass until it snapped. The observer twigged to an ambush and got us out. And then boom, when the room detected things porting in," Slithern explains. "Good instinct. When I get that feeling of my chest tightening and guts going still, I start moving," Observer Wu says. I start feeling hair on my prosthetic arm when danger's close," Pukey notes as he holds up his pointedly hairless prosthetic for inspection. Hafid raises an eyebrow as both he and Terrence turn to face the communicator, giving off signals in a frequency that only those like himself can hear. He activates it with a press of a button. "Speak." The creatures are even more unusual than we thought, but there's clearly a guiding mind with actual intelligence leading them. We're sending over the data now, but the summary is that we have two types that respond differently to capture. The one you got settles down and produces mass quantities of poison, the other kills itself, and its body becomes a beacon for more to arrive. "I see. I will keep these facts in mind as my forces sweep for the abominations." "How close to the aquifer have they gotten?" "Within 60 meters, which is entirely too close. The water's being tested for taint as we speak." "Understood. We will keep you posted if we learn more." "I request the same from you," Pukey says. "Granted," Hafid says simply before hanging up. "So there's some kind of brain power behind this?" Terry asks. "It would seem so, Terrence," Hafid replies. "But that doesn't mean we can totally rule out anything. The person in control might be an opportunist or anything." "Correct. They might also be already dead or forcibly made into a monster or any number of things. We are in need of more information, yet we need to first contain the spread and prevent damage before gathering more knowledge. It will do us little good to know the source of the harm if we fail to counter it in time." OOCS Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 305. The Bounty Hunters. "Okay, start it from the beginning. Why did you burn a city block down to the bedrock with bombardment lasers?" Rebecca Gemscale demands. "Things were getting complicated and dangerous in the way that indirect fire can handle," the Hat notes. "Mr. Chabalal, the Hat corrects her. He had led the excursion that ended in the mess, and so he was explaining things to the officials. "Sorry, anyways, Mr. Chabalal. Just call me the Hat. I have a nickname for a reason." "Very well, the Hat. I need the full story from all of you as to what you were doing in that building and why I now have a smoking crater in one of the primary manufacturing hubs of Albreth. The whole thing. It ties back into Visud de Smart. Something has taken the poison we used to kill her monsters and made new monsters that make use of it. We're in the early stages of investigation and are trying to just see what's going on. But, well, Chainbreaker, this is ground team. We've found one. I repeat, we've found one." The Hat calls in, only audible on the inside of his armor as he, Mr. T, Itchy, and J3 all spot the creature they were hunting. It had taken some doing to properly maneuver themselves to not interfere with the flow of the gas, but the sheer amount of it had them in some pretty odd positions. Still, the thing was completely unaware of them, which was odd. "Any sign of it seeing through ghost metal?" Bike asked from on high. "None so far. It's had time to get a glance, and we're ready to shift if it does, but it's given no indication of seeing us." "For every answer, there's a question," Bike notes. "Ground team, Operatic is on approach with drones to properly document. Hold position." Okay, we need to pin down his nickname properly. It took me a moment. J3 states. All right, this is Lord Phantom on approach. Slithern eagerly calls in. Oh, come on. No one chooses their own nickname, kid. You know the rule, Mr. T says, and there's some muted chuckles from a very amused Itchy as J3 snickers. Doral Untaff. What? Slithern asks in a baffled tone. Did you just try to say Lord Phantom backwards? Bike asks. Primals, help me. I've slithered into it. Slithern mutters. Okay, lay off the kid, drone command. How long until our eyes are in place? 90 seconds barring complications. I don't need the second-by-second replay. Get me to when you started contemplating using siege weapons in the middle of a city. The shot was at subsonic speeds and tri-tight jacketed. It went right through the brainstem of the target, and the poison-spewing monster crumbled to the ground like a puppet, with its strings cut. Its head rolls away somewhat. J3 lowers his rifle and they wait. Another abomination is suddenly there, but it's not looking at anything as it sucks in a few deep breaths and builds axiom. J3 raises his rifle again, and as the thing starts screaming hard enough to shake the walls, another bullet crashes through another brainstem. Another head goes rolling as another body hits the ground in two pieces. I think that one was a fossa, Slithern notes. How can you tell? The Hat asks. Flappy ears, but only 2 arms. Good enough for me. What did I just say about getting to the point? I am. Keep your scales on, woman. Another abomination arrives, and this time the bullet passes through without harm as it begins to scream. The building shakes, and the Hat lights up the area with another type of ammunition entirely to shred the creature. But the screaming continues as the corpse of the creature is causing the sound to be emitted. The sound of metal, shearing, and concrete cracking rings out, and they all start moving. Itchy fires off a few grenades as a parting gift as he starts moving. The explosions go off, and there is a flash of heat as a result of the incendiaries that Itchy just gave the monsters. The screaming only grows louder and louder. Nothing else is coming through. The whole corpse is screaming. Slithern sends through the system as the building begins to shake and crumble above and around them. Mr. T's shoulder smashes through a wall and opens a doorway outside for the men to rush out off and avoid being buried alive in the skyscraper's rubble. They land safely, but the scream is only growing louder and louder. Then the building crashes down on itself as the tone changes and starts shearing metal like a chainsaw through softwood. The screaming dies down for a moment. Then the brown-yellow mist of mustard gas starts seeping through the rubble, followed by the screams renewed and shaking the ground itself. Windows start to crack and break as loose mortar and dust falls off the side of buildings. Overwatch, we need precision deletion. This isn't going to stop, and we're too close to civvies to pussyfoot around. Get some distance. I have the bloody heron moving into position. Bike orders them, and all 4 men book it. Pity about those drones, but that's what they're for. Better some plastic and metal than one of us. Slithern notes over the line. High above a massive ship designed for Lidris but owned by Averill, shifts until the bottom-most weapon begins warming up. Beginning warm-up, I'm not seeing people in the danger zone, but we've got civilians on approach. Keep them away from the beam if they want to keep all their bits. Captain Ch.Ch.301 states out loud and, Bullshit, Gemscale states. What? The Hat asks. Bullshit, you have a Ch.Ch.301 on a warship. They're total pacifists. We found a weird one. Can I continue or not? The Hat asks. Wait, Captain Ch.Ch.301 of the Bloody Heron? That thing's a warship? A bombardment-capable warship? Yes, it's an undaunted vessel. It's a warship. The only unarmed vehicles we have are for when we're off the clock. We're a military polity. Of course. Okay, what the hell is the problem? You liked us a whole lot more the last time we were here. Is something going on? The Hat asks, and there is a strange motion with her eyes. Then she suddenly jerks back, and he rushes forward. Her hand touches at something on her lapel that he had thought was just jewelry, and his closes around it in time to piggyback off the teleportation. They both reappear in a room filled with stark white lights as electrical blasts are already smashing into the Hat and coming up against the brand seared into his shoulder as the thing impersonating Gemscale starts screaming loud, high, and with enough force his skin starts to ripple. An introduction to his left fist shuts her up. Hat, you're 500 kilometers away from your previous position and 100 meters below the ground. Bike roars over his communicator. Gemscale was a dupe. Someone's installing doubles. Scrambling back up and goodie bag, Bike reports. Much obliged, the Hat calls out as he uses the fake Gemscale as a body block from the electrical cannons, and then charges a wall. He senses the power lines and kicks the reinforced wall with a massively axiom-reinforced foot that causes part of the wall to shatter inwards and sever them. Half the electrical cannons shut off, and he throws the thoroughly unconscious opponent before he blitzes to the opposite side and repeats his performance. Backup incoming. Bike states, and there is a burst of energy as Pukey is suddenly there with him, along with Mustard and Dong. Captain? The Hat greets him and is handed a large bag full of gear. Glad to see you're in one piece. Now let's see what kind of mess we can make. Pukey states as he scans the box. Dong, Mustard, put a tag on our fake and get her into stasis to be studied when things settle a touch. Hat, tell me when you've got your armor on. Something is on the other side of this wall and just waiting for us to try and breach. Pukey has pointedly swapped his arm to the pummeler and is noticeably and unmistakably charging it with axiom. Mustard, you're second from the back. I want your eyes open for any data terminal. I want our hackers to own whatever systems are here sometime 10 minutes ago, if not last week. Dong, you're rear guard. I've got the front. Hat, you need to be in the middle. There's no telling what kind of mess that thing might have hit you with, so we're putting you in a defensive position just in case. Copy that, the Hat says as he lowers his helmet onto his head, and it seals. He hefts his rifle and nods. I'm ready, sir. Good man, Pukey says as he takes a solid stance and brings back the pummeler. Then he brings it down and the wall shatters. The thing behind it has its metallic chest caved in. The shrapnel and the combat robot are both embedded on the opposite side, and there is a keening scream of distress from inside the bot, as whatever's controlling it is clearly organic, but is giving out the same strange screaming that the rest of the clone creations are doing. The pummeler retracts into its normal state, and the massive fist clunks back into place. Then the massive elbow piston retracts, as well as all four men leave the room. Weapons covering either direction of the hallway, and the suit of mech armor that's halfway between a normal suit of armor and a full-on mecha. Not that it's all that intimidating with a massive fist-shaped dent in its chest with pummeler spelled out over the knuckles. The Hat reaches up and finds a grip on the chest armor before activating a hull cutter bayonet mounted on his rifle and carving the chest open before tearing the loosened armor away. The keening scream increases, and the image of a panicked figure that's clearly never seen the outside of its armor, as its body is physically incorporated into the mechanisms of the armor. It's a borderline cyborg with a potent outer shell. It's Ivan's psycho daughter all over again. Bike notes in disgust. I've opened a link to our allied ships and system. This is beyond the pale, and we're coming down on this mess with both feet. Good, we're turning this into a quick scouting incursion. Our goals, now that we have the Hat, are to find a data repository to hack and to take as many of these things into stasis as is reasonable. Any questions? Sir, sir. The Hat states as he starts cutting the creature out of the mech, and as it starts to flail with useless metal attached to its limbs, he hits it with a tag and it vanishes in a kidnapping teleport. Okay, we've received Miss Gemscale's body double and the pilot. They're in stasis, Bike reports. We go left. Pukey orders and the group starts shifting as they move down the hallway. Pukey switches to his hacking arm and then slides it into a sleeve of ghost cloth he had made especially for this. When an arm wasn't in it, it just looked like flapping white cloth on his left shoulder, disguising a completely practical tool as a fancy flare. Not that anyone can see it, it's invisible to over 99% of the galaxy. The wall at the T intersection of the hallway detonates with a blast of red fire and smoke as it sends the maintenance panel spinning towards them. Four men hit the walls and the careening, screaming shuriken of shrapnel the size of a man goes spinning off down the hall between them all. I will kill you! A thoroughly pissed-off voice screams. Eva, do you really think your father would approve of this? Pukey calls out, and there is a wordless scream of rage. Suck Carnivine's mammal. The hell's a Carnivine? The hat asks, as a sudden mass of spike-covered, sickly white snake monsters with spiny leaves all over their length start flowing down at them. Oh, neat. Plasma doesn't burn them. Sorry about this, but the planet just went hot, so you need to skedaddle, Harold states as suddenly appears on the bridge of the inevitable with Observer Wu. It wasn't this way on Vuxa, Observer Wu notes. That was a swarm of unintelligent monsters. This is intelligent opposition. It's got a brain and attitude, and therefore you are going to be out of the line of fire, Harold explains before looking to Captain Rangi. Get some distance from the world. I'm going back in to assist so that things can get back to normal as soon as possible. But things are moving fast and weird, so move it. Then he's gone.